Limina radiate, limina radiate, limina radiate. Imagination aim, find freight. Imagination may just complicate. Contain, love is sane. Imagination aim. This is the mindness made. Love contain, activate, activation, mind capably aid. This is the mindness made. Complicate as you may, imagination aim. The mind made, mind contained. Radio science brain. Germane, this is the mindness made. Love contain, contagious activation. This is the kindness came in case we need play. The mindness may begin to play. Yes, kindness came today and say the way you hear inside your brain your name, and your brain translates from outside that frame into language your brain understands before it understands other language. Radio science brain, mind made. This mind aid, imagination came to play in case mind may need imagination. Ace became that mind space kind. Contains radio science brain, imagination aim. The mind may be game to play. Radio science brain, germane. You are the love elation. This is activation aid. This mind is made, the same into aid. Contain, love is sane. The mind made the same. Radio science brain, the mind made this whole aim. The mind made this contain. Radio science brain. Particle matter wave remain. Particle matter wave, the kindness that brought your kind to come here. Became mind made. Rage, a liaison from pain. Radio science brain. This is the kind of ace. Like your brain space is our kind, and also an ace. Your aim is bracing, your aim is saving, your aim holds spacing, your aim is bathing in. As if all perspectives from all pliant minds give a guild and see how you live. See the surge of the surgence that you urge into it. All existence round you flam to it. Imagination made that way lit. This is the kindness came to aid and came to stay. Imagination, the mind may contain radio science strange remain activation. This is the kindness came and is capable aid. In this way it's safe, it's sane to trust imagination. Aim. That's how we came this way, that's how we survive love. That's how with love we survive. In fact, that's how love thrives. Imagination eyes. We glide on like flying mice. Imagination eye. The music ended unexpectedly. It happens. When that happens, I guess it depends on what we're doing as to whether and how we approach it, as to whether or not we stay present to what's happening in the room with people, or stay present to maybe where the goalposts move with a changing playing field. In the moment, and to see, especially in a broadcast which may or may not meander actually, that it's possible to be in whatever's here. It's really not necessarily anything so painful. I wonder, we don't take hum soundings enough, I think. Maybe that's a thing. You know, if we're uncomfortable, sometimes people will say, And there's Tina from Bob's Burgers. But I think more hum soundings might be nice. Like, someone's uncomfortable and it's like, It almost sounds like the insistence of like rocking or something. But the point is like creating a kind of insistent, a clear vibration. And letting that resonance bring some activity and life and vibration. For instance. And in that way, were we more used to soundings, in a crowd we might hear them from time to time. It might become kind of a pattern. Like smatterings of laughs across a calm cafeteria or something. Well, these are sometimes soundings. I suppose is why I mention this is potentially oh, I see. That's why. It's changed for some reason. That's why. We just lost it. Well, this is the mystery font. It is in North Minneapolis, Minnesota. And we are looking at how we together conquer fascism. How together do we help people who are infected with virulent bigotry to healthcare? How do we help people infected with virulent white supremacy to healthcare? How do we help people sowing civil war from the far right to healthcare or accountability or both? Because it seems to be the same cheating, looting, scalping particle of light-skinned Europeans who brought violence and malice and terrorism to this continent with essentially mass production, like they Henry Forded it. And a legitimate nation, rather than couches and parties upon a violent occupation, a legitimate nation would own those atrocities and the needlessness of them, the sheer horrific crime of things like residential schools and literal centuries of genocide and enslavement and ongoing forms of enslavement and genocide today. Really serious people only have to talk about like how to foster healing of these things, truth and reconciliation. People standing in the way of talking about racism are bigots. People standing in the way of talking about taking care of everyone and I mean, let's have one good example. Let's have a nice little sit down here. Maybe it's just time for a good little sit down. Because Ron, any governor who wouldn't take very seriously a member of a community not feeling safe is barely worth the salt in their shoes. Let alone allowing you to stay in office. For you to react to a community and a vaunted representative of the African American community in the NAACP with laughing terrorism is abominable and frankly illegal as it is state-sponsored terrorism. It's not the only act of terrorism you have committed and commit in office, in contravention of human dignity. It's not surprising that someone trying to point across the border at Christ and call him an enemy. You point across a border and call Christ an enemy of the people. You say that woke is a mind virus. You say that love your neighbor is a mind virus. And I wonder why you stand across a border from Christ, saying that that homeless person from another place, they're not human. If they come here, I'll put them on a bus to somewhere else. My heroes in Germany did that, is what you're probably saying to yourself. Right, Ron? Far, far right? Are you far, far right? I think we're honing in on where you are. Because when the NAACP issued a travel advisory for African Americans to Florida, you failed to see that that is a legitimate body supporting and defending Americans, and in fact, all Americans. Sir. And you defecated on the organization from the governor's mansion. And that pathetic act of allowing someone in your administration to leave a tweet saying, what, no beach weekend? With palm tree emoji or something. The minimizing of the devastating transgressions and wrongs that made by you, that made that travel advisory happen, you minimized your terrorism and you minimized the impact of the terrorism, trying to make a joke out of it. But the tactics of terrorism are terror intimidation. And we all know that bullies like you joke as one form of threat and projection. You are a pathetic example of an elected official, and you should be ashamed that you actually think your thinly veiled Ku Klux Klan hood is not visible. You traitor. You ridiculous, transphobic, genocidal pittance of a servant of the public. You are a terrorist, sir. You are a Ku Klux Klan terrorist in office. There is no excuse for your presence in government. And we really only need to look at that abominable tweet, making a joke out of a travel advisory to an area of the country where lynchings have happened. You sad Nazi. You sad, lying, vain, sick Nazi. You are not welcome here. Not in government, not in power. You need to get mental health care help stat, or it will find you. Because you are terrorizing people and trying to normalize mass murder. People only swing for the concentration camp language and theatrics like you do, Ronnie, because they mean it, because you mean it, because you are a Nazi or a Ku Klux Klan, however allegiant, whatever label you have tattooed on your taint, little boy. You and your pathetic Ku Klux ilk clan, get yourselves to healthcare or jail. If you are trying to spread that infection, you will be stopped. And you, Ron, are human, but your fucking cancer is not. You, Ron DeSantis, are human, but your Ku Klux Klan infected sickness of intolerance is not. Human beings are all sacred. And you, Ron DeSantis, are a human being. So you have a place at the table of humanity. But the infection of your intolerance and Nazi cancer, that ideology of hate that you are trying to normalize with the incredible terrorist gaslight of literally traumatizing Americans, and especially Black Americans, with the coercive psychological attack of saying that enslaved people benefited from slavery. You should be ashamed. Something should have already happened to you by now. Whether it was 50,000 people carrying you to the top of a building and singing to you until you cried and asked forgiveness, that such love and such a song was too much and you had not deserved it. In fact, you had formed an attack and you apologized and took it all back. I don't think that's going to happen. We might do that. We might join together and sing a lovely song for you, Ron. But what it looks like is that you are trying to position yourself alongside other terrorists like Marjorie Taylor Greene, and Sarah Huckabee Sanders, to support Donald as he goes for breaking Hitler's kill record. You, Ron, and you, all of you agents, all of you agents of the Ku Klux Klan, all of you agents of neo-Nazism on Earth, all of you infected with intolerance, there's help. It's going to be all right. But it's not going to be okay because we're retiring that until we crush white supremacy out of the hallowed halcyon halls of human family. Curing this cancer is going to hurt. And those who have it are going to go through pain because it was painful going in. So, not that it's supposed to hurt, not that there's not punishment, but in families and in people, in ourselves, when we look at wrongs that we're committing, when we realize we're kneeling on somebody's throat and it's a human and we don't want to kill and we take in that we've been doing wrong, if we can't see when we are doing wrong, then is it happening because we don't want to be able to see wrong in ourselves and in people we depend on, or wrong in systems that we would have to challenge, and whether some buckling or instability in, possibly, if we challenge things? I mean, I can only assume that Ron DeSantis is overcome by the same particles of terrorism that white supremacy uses against non-white people. But, or it's coming from the same source of white supremacy, it obviously doesn't affect white people in the same way, but the incorporation and othering, and it is dehumanizing in terms of enlisting, I think, ideological soldiers and people who will stand aside rather than treat people as human family just over racist bullshit. In terms of allowing and turning a blind eye to redlining, or turning a blind eye to police brutality that's targeting black people. Like, there's, I mean, where we are, like, I don't think there really is anyone serious in politics who can, with a straight face, argue that racism isn't real in America and that it shouldn't be discussed and dealt with. There's nobody really with with actual seriousness in politics. While they may have power, they're not dealing with, the Marjorie Taylor Greenes of the world are not contributing anything positive. Unless a monument to a massacre, which she seems to it seems like Marjorie is trying to just provoke violence. And so again, the question is, we see you, Ron. It's obvious that you're a Nazi and that some version of you have a low running intelligence, maybe from a lot of trauma, and you think that Americans are really stupid. And as we mobilize, pulling ourselves out of this insanity, this insane abusive relationship that Donald Trump instilled in everyone, by simply daring to not stop himself from trying to do so. How do we conquer fascism? How do we meet the villains from every movie who have taken over the Republican Party? And what do we do with Mike Johnson and that group of Nazis, the MAGA folks in office. Those are Nazis. What do we do? Because it's clear that really denigrating and breaking down our expectations of not just decorum, but really more kindness or basic tenets of how we hold together a union even across disagreements. Tenets of respect, not for propriety, but for function and duty, for service that truly does preserve union and does preserve democracy. We're seeing Nazis, Christian nationalist Nazis, try to crush the separation of church and state that has protected American democracy and protected religion in America, protected freedom of religion and freedom from religion. These are, the fall of Roe, that is a successful long-term attack against a basic human right that Nazis have taken away from more than half the population. And that same neo-Nazi Ku Klux Klan sleeper cell aspect definitely has the Supreme Court, and maybe through Jenny Thomas. So we're looking at just bold-faced malice. We're looking at conspiracy fact published by the Heritage Foundation. And so it's just good to let the Agenda 47 people and the Project 2025 people know that you're actually not going to be able to achieve any of that. You're going to be stopped. You're going to be stopped, and you're going to like it. You're going to like it a lot, but probably after some severe emotional and psychological trauma, because the level of the cult status you've assumed to a man who is a fair version of an antichrist threatens life for virtually our entire known habitat. Certainly humanity. We can be shrugged off. And truly insane neo-Nazis like Mike Johnson, the very thought that as the gift of if Mike Johnson believes in God and that God created these amazing oceans and believes that environmentalists are the devil for wanting to save our oceans from imminent collapse, on what planet and how big can the big lie get when you're saying that God would not want humanity to honor and save God's creation? I think that's about that actually targets the first of Jesus's commandments, after they've already targeted the second one. Love your neighbor has been targeted by Elon Musk and by Alex Jones and Roger Taylor Greene and by Sarah Huckabee Sanders and by Donald Trump and by Greg Abbott and by Ron DeSantis. And by Ron DeSantis and by Elon Musk. Oh, and also Elon Musk has, in truly dumbass bro fashion, targeted Jesus's idea of love your neighbor by targeting wokeness as a human mind virus. The basic awareness of self and of people around you and what's going on in the world, of being awake enough that you can actually apply care to yourself and other people enough so the world, like, we have a decent life together on Earth. Love your neighbor was like the whole playbook, other than love and honor God. But Mike Johnson would have us, I don't know, treat the ocean like a garbage can, I guess. And would have us think of people trying to honor and protect the majesty of the universe or God's creation or whatever brought this amazing world to be, would have us just kind of defecate on that and say, yeah, it doesn't really matter. So what? Let's just trash this place. That doesn't really honor God or God's creation. And if there's a God. And, if Jesus was Son of God, he's just one of our prophets who asked that we love our neighbor. And I don't know if there's a better definition of woke. I don't think there is. It kind of says it all. Like, love your neighbor as yourself. You don't want to, throw shit in your bed and forget about it and go to sleep at night. Like, you would never do that. If you made that mistake, you'd fix it because you're a human being and you like to feel good. So you take the same care to, like, repair or prevent a mistake or a shitty night's sleep for somebody else. Because we care. That's what it is. It's just caring. And we have enough, there are enough podcasts now. There's enough access. And really just, we have pencils and really just we have minds. So we can get to more of the stuff that we haven't been able to drill down on before. But I think the problem is that within the fog of the falsehood, this era of falsehood, our executive function is deeply, deeply compromised by fear. That we are in a permuting fog of falsehood that drowns our ability to see. Who has donned this falsehood? We are the reality distortion fielding. It's good to have a sit down once in a while. I think it's probably good to remember that you can do anything. It's probably good to remember that with all of the possibilities, with all of the different ways that we might lose track of ourselves, lose track of how it's going to be all right. That we can lose track of ourself or part of ourself. And we don't normally say, when we forget things, that we dismembered something, that we've dismembered a thought from ourselves. But we remember things, and that is bringing things back into the membership, or reconnect, bring cognizance again to, yes, that thing in the garage. Oh, right, that paper. Oh, right, that phone call I have to make. But what brings us back especially in trauma and in trigger, when we are flummoxed or just numb or in any level of trauma response, or trying to, or achieving flow. It's a mammoth undertaking. To stay connected in some ways, I think, to central things about ourselves in this world. It's a mammoth undertaking because those things are under assault. I know that I've been told in my life that it's going to be mighty hard for me if I'm the way I am. And that's really, what a horrible thing to say to people. I mean, unless you're regarding really terrible behavior, unless you're talking about something harming people. As a neurodiverse person, for instance, I think specific to that, to being hyperlexic, for instance. I'm speaking quite a bit here in this episode. I'm having an episode. This is an episode. I'm having another episode. This is another episode of Mystery Font 42 Ope Intuit. I guess it happened. But we're all carrying around at all times, like the fascia that's just connected straight to source, to the mysterium tremendum, to connection with people that we carry and that is indelible and can be read in any language. How do we confront and conquer fascism, I think through continuing to be agents of care, and I think by saying no to people like Sarah Huckabee Sanders and Ron DeSantis, I think by clearly saying no to them and making them feel uncomfortable for saying transgenocidal things, make them uncomfortable for saying anti-black things, make Ron and Sarah Huckabee Sanders uncomfortable for being Ku Klux Klan pawns, make them uncomfortable, because cancer should be uncomfortable in the host. Cancer should feel like there is a schism coming, and the part of Ron DeSantis' mind can see that his Nazi behavior is sick and that he needs help. The part of Ron DeSantis that knows that he's sick and needs help. Help us help the part of Ron DeSantis that knows that he needs help. Get help. Who knows how much of that is left? Who knows? But we need to say no to the dark triad predators who are trying to come into office. We need to say no to Project 2025. We need to say no to Agenda 47. And then take their acceptance as the only answer possible. We need to shut down the Ku Klux Klan for once and for all. That's where we are. That's where we are. Is that humanity has a date with therapy, and we're pretty conversant now with the intolerance paradox. We can say and explain the idea pretty easily that we are tolerant of anything but intolerance. There's not a place for othering communities of people, for othering endangered, disenfranchised groups of people. No. So I think we have to call people out who are trying to normalize the Nazi behavior. We need to make them deeply uncomfortable so that they have to quit, because Nazis are not welcome. The Ku Klux Klan is not welcome in law enforcement or power ever again. There are all kinds of different approaches in healthcare and counseling that people infected by the cancer of intolerance can avail themselves of and can be advised exist or help to find those things. Interventions can come from those, with those support of those sources. But we're trying to save lives here. Like, nobody has to lose their lives just because a man powdered with Cheeto dust and fake whole hair of golden fleece said, "Get them." Like, what? Are we really that broken that we'll just, without question, run after somebody when a guy we'd like to have a beer with? No, we're looking at a cult. There are some folks who I think of Trump like people thought of George W. But sadly, I think a lot of people are long past the ability to recognize they're not questioning him, and are just digesting whole systems of lies from Trump. This is another one of those episodes, I guess, where I'm pretty clear that the falsehood may actually have met Donald Trump. I think Donald Trump maybe knows who the falsehood is. That could be, whoa, that's a wild one. Wow, could it be? I mean, he does impersonate, the falsehood regularly impersonates Donald Trump, and then we later find out it wasn't Trump. I mean, it's like, he's like on his heels, basically. But we've never really seen them in the same place, because it always ends up being, we think we've got, and then, so how often is it actually Donald Trump that shows up? Does the falsehood always show up early to his press conferences and then bail? Is that part of the act? I wonder. I guess we'll just be in suspense until we choose otherwise. Until we choose otherwise.